Hello and welcome to another GMP video. I'm the host JonNario, and today I'll be talking about the Chloromancer and pretty much going in depth on the Chloromancer. So you already know how I do my in-depth type of videos where I just go over the multipliers, so I go over the numbers, and I'll go over all that kind of stuff regarding a certain character. But this time around, instead of just focusing 100% on all of the properties, I'm just going to be giving away some more tips and how to properly utilize this character, what are going to be the key ability that you need to take into consideration if you want to use this character in its fullest potential. If my voice is a little bit raspy, that's still because I'm not 100% in terms of like just how I feel regarding my throat, because I got a cold like a couple of days ago and I'm still recovering from time to time here and there. So yeah, sometimes I'm just going to sound a little bit more raspy. Same goes with like the microphone. I actually do have the microphone closer because I actually do manage to get myself an actual pop filter, so the actual quality of the microphone it should be a little bit better. But yeah, with all that being said, one more thing that I need to mention is that tomorrow on the 23rd of September I'll be turning 27 years old. So yes, I'll probably be doing somewhat of a short live stream on my Twitch at twitch.tv/JonNario94. I hope to see you guys there, or if this is posted after the fact that I made the birthday stream, then I hope you enjoyed your stay. With all that being said and all those disclaimers out of the way, let's get started with the Chloromancer. I will be doing some comparisons here and there, but mainly I'm just going to be talking about the properties on all of the abilities. So if you want more of an actual comparison on how this character used to be in terms of damage multiplier and all that good stuff, I would suggest just checking out my Uber 10 how good is the Chloromancer in Uber 10 pre-patch video, so you can actually just see how every single ability does work out. Because if I actually do try to explain everything, that will be here for half an hour. I really don't want to just be explaining stuff for half an hour. Now, going with all of the abilities, like always, I will always start with the basic attack, and then I will go with the passive ability, and then all of the abilities, including the class gem. I will be doing this as a live commentary with the target dummy, so I can actually just showcase live footage and just a live presentation on the actual character on its own, so you can actually have an idea of how to properly utilize it. With all that being said, let's get started with the basic attack. The basic attack pretty much remained unchanged from pre-patch. It's still a single target, 1 times damage multiplier, 2 attacks per second basic attack. So yeah, it is still single target and it still has all of those problems. It's still a pretty weak basic attack in my personal opinion. Excluding the passive ability, and heck, even with the passive ability, it generally doesn't make it that much better. But yeah, it's still a single target, 2 attacks per second, which is pretty fast, but 1 times damage multiplier, which is tied with the lowest. So yeah, in terms of the basic attack on its own, it's not good. Now, the only thing that it pretty much does differently from pre-patch is that now it heals plants for more percentage and also players, but that generally doesn't matter as much. But yeah, either way, that's essentially the basic attack. It is still a weak basic. You will be using it quite a lot though, because the basic attack is still a pretty important utility basic, so you will be using that quite a lot. With all that being said regarding the basic attack, now let's move on to the mini bloom passive ability. The mini bloom passive ability, what it does is, as you're seeing right there, the mini bloom passive ability is when you hit an enemy with a basic attack, it has a chance to spawn plants nearby player. They will explode in a burst of pollen that heals ally and damage enemies. Using a basic attack on the mini bloom makes them explode instantly. So yeah, whenever you hit an enemy with a basic attack, you have around a 20% chance of spawning one plant that works almost exactly the same as the pre-patch blooming pollinator, which is the explosion plant. It's just going to deal damage to all enemies around it, and it's going to heal plants and players as well. So it's essentially the same thing. But the thing is, it's just going to be that comparable to the pre-patch version. The pre-patch was 7 basic. This one is just 1 basic attack and it will just immediately detonate. Now, is this better than Blooming Pollinator? I would probably say yes. Does this ability make this ability much better? Not really, honestly speaking. The only problem, the gripe that I have with this ability, by the way, the damage multiplier is 4.5 times damage multiplier on the explosion. I forgot to mention that one, and the duration is still 20 seconds if you don't hit it with the basic attack. So yeah, it's like I just mentioned, it's pretty much exactly the same as Blooming Pollinator. It just does slightly less damage and it detonates much quickly. The only problem that I have with this ability is, like you just saw right there, if I'm attacking the enemy just constantly with my basic attack, you are going to see that the plants just drop everywhere around the enemy. So I had to actually just physically just aim directly towards the plant in order to actually do it. And if, in case you may or may not know, Trove has somewhat of an auto aim targeting system that just helps you out in hitting enemies with projectile based abilities. So even if, like you're seeing right here, I'm not aiming the enemy directly, the basic attack is still hitting the enemy. So sometimes you are going to try to just hit the plants that you're seeing around it, then you're going to end up just retargeting directly to the enemy. So that's a problem. That's number one problem. Number two is just going to end up being that it's not instant, it's just going to drop right there, and you had to hit it with a basic attack, which is not something similar to like the Ice Age, where the Ice Age is just going to detonate based on hits, and that's much better because it's just 100% guarantee. With this one, you can just detonate it immediately. In the case of this one, not so much. You had to actually just aim towards the plant in order to detonate it. That's pretty much one of the reasons why this character is not necessarily good at dungeon grinding even post patch, because that was the only somewhat good opportunity of making this character pretty decent, at least on the lower end of the spectrum and mid game with the Chloromancer, so you can actually just have an actual explosion that dishes out pretty hefty damage alongside your basic attack. But no, unfortunately that's not the case, and this is still somewhat mediocre. You're going to end up using it because it's still going to spawn there at random. It's your passive ability. You don't have to do any setup, it's just going to spawn there, so it's not so bad in that regard. Now, let's move on to the next ability. The next ability is Green Gatling. Green Gatling, as you're seeing right there, what it does is you throw a plant, and once you throw a plant, you are going to shoot it or just wait it out until it fully grows. It's going to target one enemy, shoot 10 shots, and then just reset. That cycle that I just mentioned right there is what I like to call an actual cycle and a burst cycle. This ability has some burst cycle depending on if you're using the ultimate ability, or it depending if you're not using your ultimate ability. In the case of not using your ultimate ability, it only has one cycle of shots. So it's just going to stay there, target one enemy, shoot 10 shots, then reset. And again, like I just mentioned before in the previous videos, those 10 shots are going to work exactly the same as the old class gem ability, which is just 2 lines of damage per shot. So that is 10 shots, 2 lines of damage per shot. That's 20 lines of damage of one burst. And each line of damage is going to dish out 1.6 times damage multiplier, which is not too bad. So 1.6 times damage multiplier, multiply that by 20, and that's essentially your burst. So your burst is a 32 times damage multiplier burst with the Green Gatling, which is very, very nice. The cooldown seems to be around 2 seconds of cooldown that you can just throw down the Green Gatling, and the maximum plants that you can throw down is 3 plants. So that's about it. So yeah, that's Green Gatling. It's a really strong single target ability that you can just throw down like immediately. Funny thing is that one of my suggestions was to make this their actual ultimate ability and just keep all of the other things just a little bit better, the Blooming Pollinator. So making this an actual ability that you can just throw down every 2 seconds, that's actually not too bad. That's a pretty decent in terms of burst damage potential. You can just delete certain bosses with this character. It's ridiculous, and that is with the regular Green Gatling. The empowered version of the Green Gatling just actually deletes enemies. It's ridiculous. That's why this character is currently the highest single target DPS in the entire game. Anyways, so let's move on to the next ability. The next ability is going to be Leafy Lasher. Leafy Lasher used to be your old first ability on the Chloromancer, and yeah, essentially what it does is going to be, it works exactly the same. You throw down a plant, and that plant is just going to fully grow. After it's fully grown, it's just going to just start spinning, dealing damage to all enemies around it. But the thing is, comparable to the pre-patch version, this one got heavily nerfed in all aspects. This is one thing that I will be doing a comparison to pre-patch, because this is one of the most bizarre nerfs that I've seen in a while. This makes you think why. So yeah, to do a comparison to this one to the pre-patch version, now let's go with the damage first and foremost. Damage output. Pre-patch used to dish out 2.15 times damage multiplier. Post-patch, currently it dishes out 1 times damage multiplier, so that's less than half in terms of damage multiplier. Pre-patch, it used to just fully grown in around a second to 2 seconds. As you're seeing right there, it's taking a little bit longer to fully grown, so it is pretty funny because you can see that the plant just fully grown and then just gets stuck a little bit for like half a second to a second to fully grown completely. That's because the animation is still the same, but considering that it takes longer to fully grow, it just stays there in that idle position for a little bit longer, which is kind of funny. Either way, it takes longer to fully grow. It dishes out less damage. Pre-patch, it used to dish out damage every 0.4 seconds, so a little over 2 attacks per second. This time it attacks every 0.8 seconds, so a little over 1 attacks per second, which is rough. That is half the speed and less than half the damage. But what did they do to compensate? They just made it so that you can actually stack your Leafy lasher. But the problem is just that the Leafy lasher limit got reduced from 4 maximum plants to 2 maximum plants. So yeah, the current maximum is going to be 2 plants. You're seeing 2 of them right there. I throw out the third one, the first one will disappear completely. So yeah, they reduced the maximum plants from 4 to 2 while dealing less than half the damage while attacking half the speed. So even 2 plants right now are weaker than one pre-patch Leafy lasher, and considering that the Leafy lasher pre-patch you could throw up to 4 plants at maximum, even though only one of them dishes out damage, but the AoE is much larger despite this one having actually a larger AoE. But yeah, that's about it. Like, this got heavily nerfed from what it used to be pre-patch, and the snare is still exactly the same. It still reduces movement speed by 50% per hit, but is less effective because it dishes out less attacks per second. And yeah, that's essentially what Leafy Lasher turned out to be. Like, it's just the biggest Y nerf that I've seen in a while. Either way, let's move on. We're moving on with the Empower Growth Ultimate ability. The Empower Growth Ultimate ability, what it does is, whenever you activate this ability, it will empower your Leafy Lashers and your Green Gatlings to larger versions. Green Gatling deals increased damage and Leafy Lasher snares additional effectiveness. Well, gains additional effectiveness. Now, this description obviously doesn't tell everything. Heck, not even the patch note tells you everything. This is something that I actually just found out very recently. I found that out first and foremost in the private test server when I was just doing testing on this character on the PTS. But the funny thing is that they never actually did mention this regarding the ultimate ability version of Leafy Lasher, which I'll get more into that once I start talking about the Leafy Lasher. But first and foremost, the ultimate ability version on Green Gatling. But first and foremost, what you might be thinking, what is this force field around my character? This force field is going to be your class gem ability, which is going to be called Plant Power. The class gem ability, what it does is just going to create that field around you, healing all plants and players that are nearby. It just works as a slightly weaker version of your basic attack. And yeah, that's essentially what it is going to end up being. It's pretty decent, especially if you're just nearby near your plant, throwing down the plants right in front of you, so you don't have to just attack it with your basic attack. And heck, even if you attack it with basic attack, it's going to heal up the plants much quickly, making them just active much quickly, so they can dish out much more damage. So yeah, that's essentially what is going to end up being your class gem ability. Some people might call it useless. I call it alright. I don't call it useless. I don't call it bad. I just call it like an alright class gem because, you know, the range is kind of limited sometimes, and it can be rough here and there, but it does its job well done. So I will call it an average class gem ability in terms of effectiveness. Either way, that's neither here or there. What we're going to be talking about mostly is going to be Empower Green Gatling. So The empowered version of Green Gatling is just going to be the same as the regular Green Gatling. The only thing is that damage gets increased and the amount of cycles also gets increased. Like I just mentioned before, the cycles are going to be target, shoot, reset. That's a cycle. Without the ultimate ability, it's one cycle. So it will target, shoot an enemy, reset, and that's it. With the ultimate ability, it has either 3 or 4 cycles. Allow me to explain. Normally, the Green Gatling without the ultimate ability has one cycle. It will just target, shoot, and it will stay there until it disappears. It doesn't shoot again. So you're seeing it right there. It doesn't shoot again. In the case of the ultimate ability Green Gatling, you can just throw it down and just wait it until it's fully grown, and it will sometimes shoot either 3, like you're seeing right over there. That's the second cycle, and that's the third cycle, and it will just return, and it will try to shoot the 4th, and it will just disappear. But you can actually just make that into 3 cycles, and if you actually just do something like this and just throw down a Green Gatling from really far away. So it will just fully grow normally, and once it starts shooting, you will see 1. That is the second burst. That is the third burst, and it will just return. It will try to shoot, and it will just, disappear. So essentially, it's just going to be, for the majority of the time, 4 bursts, but sometimes it will be 3. But yeah, it will get increased cycles. That's the important thing to keep in note. The thing is, not only gets increased in cycles, so in terms of duration, it's much longer. It also gets damage increase from 1.6 per line of damage. Mind you, this is a line of damage. So remember that is 20 lines of damage per burst. From 1.6 to 3.8 times damage multiplier. 3.8 times damage multiplier per line. That means per burst, 1 empowered Green Gatling per burst is doing 76 times damage multiplier. It's pretty absurd, not gonna lie. 76 times damage multiplier per burst, and keep in mind that the limit is still 3 plants, and you can throw down all 3 plants with a cooldown reduction like the Chronomatic Emblem. This is going to be an essential emblem for high DPS Chloromancer. High DPS Chloromancer are going to benefit from these. Just activate your ultimate ability and activate, a flash so you can get the Chronomatic Emblem, so you can just throw down all 3 plants. So as you can see, there's literally all 3 Green Gatling just going ham against the target dummy. So yeah, that's essentially what it's going to end up being. The reason being that Chronomatic Emblem is very, very important is because the cooldown gets increased from 1 second, well 2 seconds I do believe is the regular Green Gatling, to 8 seconds. So it's an 8-second cooldown ability. Chronomatic Emblem, every time you use a flash, you reduce the cooldown of all of your abilities by 7 seconds. So that includes obviously Green Gatling. So all you gotta do is just use 1 flash and just throw 1 Green Gatling immediately, and it's just essentially going to allow you to throw down 1 more Green Gatling just immediately after a second. So you can easily just maintain all 3 Green Gatling with the Chronomatic Emblem. So yeah, that is going to end up being your main bread and butter damage multiplier ability, because you can throw down 3 Green Gatling that are dishing out per burst of 76 times damage multiplier per Green Gatling. Again, there's 3 Green Gatling throwing bursts like crazy, and again, there's essentially 4 bursts per Green Gatling. Yeah, that is pretty much the sole reason why this is the highest single target DPS character in the entire game. That Green Gatling is ridiculous. And to top it all off, there's actually a really funny story. That ability actually got nerfed twice. It used to be 4.5 times damage multiplier. It also was a limit of 4 plants instead of 3. It was pretty bizarre. It was ridiculous. The pre-patch Green Gatling, it was completely broken and busted, but right now it's still pretty darn effective, and 3.8 times damage is nothing to scoff at. So instead of just going right now into the Leafy lasher, now I'm going to be explaining to you how to properly utilize the DPS. Now what you want to do is just activate the ultimate ability, throw Green Gatling essentially every single flash, and just keep attacking with your basic attack. Obviously throw down your Leafy lasher as well alongside your Green Gatling, and just keep using flash. Do not keep spamming your Green Gatlings, because the Green Gatling lasts for essentially the whole duration of the ultimate ability. which is 10 seconds, and the green gatling I do believe lasts for 12 seconds. I don't remember, but essentially it will last for the whole duration of your ultimate ability, so you don't have to spam your, you know, essentially your plants over and over and over again. You can just keep attacking with your actual basic attack and just keep using your flats until you have your ultimate ability once again. Once your ultimate ability goes away, activate your ult and just keep throwing down the 3 green gatling once again. And that's essentially how you actually do the highest DPS with the Chloromancer currently. Obviously with 3 green gatlings and the Leafy lasher, which you can alternate between every 2 green gatlings, and yeah, you essentially just have your setup right there with this character. That's essentially how you generally get the highest DPS. You have to be an ultimate ability all the time. Throw all 3 green gatlings at all 2 Leafy lashers so you can actually dish out more damage. Now if we move on to the empowered version of Leafy lasher, where does it actually just get increased? So one of the things that not only the tooltip that you see in the empowered growth, it says that it only gains additional effectiveness from its snare. The patch note, it will tell you that it actually only does that, but in actuality it actually does extra damage. It actually gets damage increase. So this is the actual regular Leafy lasher. It's going to be dishing out 7.3 mil damage for my Chloromancer, which is essentially 1 times damage multiplier. But as you're seeing right there, that was 18.3 mil damage with Arcane Emblem, making the regular Leafy lasher from the regular 1 times damage to 2.5 times damage multiplier with Arcane Emblem active. Obviously it's 250% damage increase. Always remember that number, 18.37 mil damage. But if you activate the actual ability on the ultimate ability Leafy lasher, you're going to see that I'm doing 18.37 mil damage. And if I use the flash, it's going to get increased to 45.9 mil. So the actual Leafy lasher on empowered with the empowered growth ultimate ability gets the damage increase from 1 times damage to 2.5, and pretty much essentially all of the other things remains the same. The only thing is going to be the cooldown gets increased to, I believe is 15 seconds of cooldown. So it has a 15-second cooldown from, I do believe normally is 10, and obviously the damage increase gets increased from 1 times damage to 2.5 times damage multiplier, and the snare effectiveness gets increased from a 50% movement speed reduction to 100% movement speed reduction. So every time the plant is going to hit an enemy, it's just going to reduce their movement speed by 100%. And yeah, aside from all of that, it's exactly the same. It will attack every 0.8 seconds. It will stack with 2 plants, the 2 plants being the maximum. Yeah, that's essentially Leafy lasher. So you're seeing right there, it's pretty interesting the fact that if you actually see the patch note, it will say that it still dishes out 1 times damage multiplier. It doesn't say in any way, shape, or form that it dishes out bonus damage, but in actuality, it dishes out 2.5 times damage multiplier, which is the same as the regular Leafy lasher with Arcane Emblem active. That's going to be the default with the regular empowered Leafy lasher. So yeah, that is essentially pretty much every single ability with the Chloromancer. Again, to explain how to properly utilize the character in terms of DPS output, make sure to, whenever you're activating a Curse Call, just imagine that this target dummy is a Curse Call. Make sure to activate your ultimate ability, throw down Green Gatling, Leafy lasher, pod, Green Gatling, pod, Green Gatling, Leafy lasher, and you essentially have your highest DPS right there. Activate a pod and you're seeing that not even the target dummy is able to keep up with the damage that is receiving from all of those things. That is essentially how you do the highest DPS with this character. Make sure to always have 2 Leafy lasher, 3 Green Gatlings while in your ultimate ability 100% of the time. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. Anyways, that's going to be everything for the Chloromancer. Thank you for watching, thank you for sticking around as always. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you think the Chloromancer is going to be your new main boss killing character? I'm going to assume so, but either way, what do you think of the Chloromancer in general? Do you like it? Do you think it's still a pretty boring character? You cannot deny that this character being pretty strong in terms of like dealing DPS. And just let me know all your overall thoughts with this character in general. With all that being said, once again, thank you for watching, leave a like, subscribe for more content like this, and I hope to see you guys next time. Take care and keep on hunting. See ya.